Welcome to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show, and thank you for being with us. Our topic, leadership, focuses on leaders such as yourselves. We believe that leadership is a skill that can be learned through practice and awareness. It is our hope that our conversation will help you become more reflective when it comes to your own leadership practices and enable you to leave a positive legacy. Our very special guest is Bobby Umar. Bobby is an inspirational speaker, coach, and one of the most prolific advocates of heart-based leadership in North America. Inc. magazine named Bobby one of the top 100 leadership speakers alongside such noteworthy giants as Richard Branson, Brené Brown, and John Maxwell. Bobby is a 5-time TEDx speaker and one of the top social media influencers in the world with over 500,000 followers. He has been named the second best business coach to follow on Twitter and the fourth best leadership influencer according to Crud. Bobby is an author of 3 books, including an international #1 bestseller. He's also a frequent Huffington Post contributor. Bobby is the president of Raeallan and the CEO of DYPB, Discover Your Personal Brand, and runs a speaker mastermind coaching program. To date, his social media influence has garnered over 1 billion impressions. Bobby was also named a 2015 speaker to watch, and most recently he was named a top 7 networking guru to follow. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Bobby, you are the professional speaker and the president of Raeallan Company, as well as the CEO of DYPB. And I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your companies and what do you do?
Sure. So I've been a professional speaker for over 13 years. I've traveled around the world speaking about leadership. In particular, my expertise is on personal branding, authentic networking, digital influence, and social media, things like that. And over the years, I've done events and spoken at events. But about 5-6 years ago, I started a conference, too, with several people on my team. And we ran a conference called Discover Your Personal Brand. It was all about personal branding and the importance of personal branding. And we ran that successfully for 5 years, and we decided, why don't we turn that into startup? Because people need to get more alignment, more focus, more impact in their lives, both business and career-wise. And so why don't we run events year-round on that topic? And so we started the startup last year. And so now, in addition to being a speaker as my main thing, I'm also running this startup where we're doing in-house training for organizations, and we're doing live events, and we're doing online stuff to help people on their personal branding journey as it applies to their careers or their business. And aside from that, I'm also doing a lot of speaker coaching, helping people become better speakers and taking the speaker brand to a much higher level.
So do you believe that anyone can be a great speaker?
Yeah, I think everyone has the ability to be a great speaker. They just need to train in different ways. Greatness is based on different aspects. So some people who are more quiet can tell a really powerful, profound story that makes them a compelling speaker. Other people might use their loud, dynamic energy to rev up a crowd. But I think everyone has that greatness of being able to speak and leverage their voice in a way that is compelling and resonates, and also you can create a career around it. Because I think everybody has a story that they can share. They have insights and expertise and experience that they can leverage. It doesn't matter what age they are. They can be any age and they can still do this. So, yeah, I think everyone can be a great speaker if they work at it in the right way.
So would you say that to be a great speaker, also you would need a good training for it, right?
Yeah, there's always, whether you're trying to lose weight or trying to study for an exam or trying to build your business or become a speaker, you can certainly do it by yourself. And there's a lot of information out there to help you do these things. But there is far more benefits to working with someone to train you or coach you. Mm-hmm. These people will provide accountability. They provide you focus. They leverage their expertise. They ultimately will help you 10 extra results. And I've never seen anyone that's done more better than without one than with one. So I think having someone to help you along the way is far more value add.
And talking about helping speakers, I know that you have a speakers mastermind program, and I was wondering if you can talk to us about it.
Sure. So one of the things I've learned over the years is that everybody wants to speak And whether it's a C-level executive or an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur, or even someone that's starting on their career, or even a young person, they want to get out there and speak more. And whether it's speak on a panel or do a keynote or do a workshop or just share their message or share their expertise or share their experience. And so what I've done is, having spoken around the world for the last 15 years, I've started my own speaker coaching program. I have 4 modules where I take people through the dynamics of speaking and building up a brand as a speaker, a story, and things like that. And it's really for people who are intermediate and advanced speakers to build up a story and profile as a speaker. And so I help them with the tough questions on negotiation and outreach and their brand and their story, their topics. But I also even help people get a TEDx talks and things like that. So it's a lot of fun because people really, they find that speaking is a life-changing aspect, whether they're doing it just to give back to the world or whether they want to create part-time or full-time income. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I've been excited to see some of these speakers that I've been working with too, who've been rising up through the ranks and getting some of the great opportunities around the world.
And thank you for sharing that, because I always wondered, how does one get on TED Talks?
Yeah, because people don't realize that there's a lot of work involved. And so, what I typically do with people for the TED Talk thing is, 1, help them focus on a topic that I think will align with the TED audiences. Number 2, put together a strong application in a way that allows them to get the TED Talk to be accepted, because I've done 5 of them. And then number 3 is, how do we then take that TED Talk and leverage it as part of our overall brand and use it as a promotional tool moving forward? I think, the idea is to first land the talk, then create the talk, and then leverage that talk.
And also be good as they deliver their talk, right?
Yeah, the create the talk piece is about making sure it's compelling, impactful, sends the right message. Absolutely.
You spoke on TEDx 5 times, and one of the topics that you covered was, could you change someone's life in 20 seconds? And I was wondering if you can share that with us, because I actually watched the video and I thought it was very impactful and very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. So I had this talk in my head for a long, long time. I actually always wanted to do a talk about the history and mystery of hugs, and just kind of how hugs are around through history, through different cultures and, different socioeconomical type cultural studies of that. But when I did the research, one of the things I found was that people will hug someone they don't know very well, or someone who's not their child or an intimate partner, for 20 seconds or more, only during times of tragedy, usually funerals. And it's because, the body needs rejuvenation and support, and there's something there about that connection. And then secondly, studies show that there are certainly benefits to the power of touch in terms of healing, whether it's 3 seconds or 6 seconds. But 20 seconds was extremely profound because it cut across all different levels of mental and physical cognitive abilities. It was actually quite fascinating what you would get from it. So the idea of my talk was, instead of having 20-second hugs that we rarely do and maybe at a funeral, why don't we actually try to put together proactive 20-second hugs on a daily basis to rejuvenate ourselves and fulfill us even before we start our day or even in the middle of our day. And it's hard to do because a 20-second hug, first off, is a long time. And I probably hugged thousands of people in my life, and I've probably had maybe 6-second hugs with maybe hundreds of people. But the number of people I've actually hugged for 20 seconds, I can probably count on my fingers, because there's so few of them. It's such a rare thing. So that was kind of my big, bold idea, to see if I could convince people to try that. It actually would be really helpful.
And what was the feedback?
Yeah, the feedback was great. I mean, they loved the idea. There's always that aha moment, like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. The only time people do hug for that long is at funerals and they're in tragic situations. And they understood the reason behind that. But then when I backed up that story with the data, they're like, wow, it was very convincing. I think the biggest feedback was like, yeah, but how? But how do we start? And so one of the things I did in the talk, which I had added near the end of it before I presented, was you have to keep in mind, though, how to begin. Because it's not like you can do a 20-second hug naturally. It's not like it's a natural thing that will, okay, that just happened. No, you kind of have to plan for it. And so I had to give people in the talk certain steps you need to do to make sure this thing happens. Like, you have to plan that type of thing in advance. Like, you have to plan with a friend or a family member. Hey, listen, I've heard this TED Talk and I've heard about the benefits of 20-second hugs. Would you be open to doing that and see how it goes? Mm-hmm. And when that happens, then you have a much better chance of doing it. So the feedback I got was, make sure you had the how, but then I made sure I put that in the talk.
And then I think also make sure that, I think some folks in their culture, they don't touch. So I guess you want to make sure that you're hugging the right person, I guess.
Well, part of it was, we looked at the social cultural aspects of hugging too, and I covered that as well in the talk. But again, at the end of the day, each person requires consent, right? So you want to make sure that they are into it. But each person actually, even if people don't, quote unquote, like hugs, it's probably for a reason. Because most humans start by needing connection and touch. And somewhere along the way, it went away. And so, my point was to understand what those root causes are and to understand that sometimes it is helpful. And I even threw in the talk for those who are not big huggers, then turn it into some sort of charity, because there are some people out there who are suffering from what's called skin starvation, in particular widows, widowers, and orphans, because they don't have the natural touch in their lives. And so there are people out there who actually go to, hospitals, and they offer to just hold children because they need that nurturing. And that to me is a very charitable way to go.
Do you feel that as leaders, we can change someone's life in 20 seconds in a positive way?
Yeah, I think that, with every interaction we have is a chance for us to make a huge impact. It's amazing. We talk about customer service and customer experience. We talk about user experience. We talk about teams, relationships, and every single article you read, every single piece of research talks about, first impressions. They talk about customer experience and making sure it's a positive thing. If you take the time to really engage in a way that creates a much better connection with people, that 20 seconds can actually ultimately change the dynamic of how your relationship is, how your business is, and even more so. So, yeah, I definitely believe that it's a great start to changing someone's life.
And I like that you talked about engagement, because I think that's very important. What would be the ways that we can engage better with people, in your opinion?
Well, one is to understand, who we're serving. So every single one of us in our business or as an entrepreneur or in our career serve different targets or different groups of people. So, for example, for me, I serve people who are speakers. I serve people who are entrepreneurs. I also serve, for example, my kids as a parent. And so understanding who our different targets are and audiences are, that's one thing. The second thing is to understand, what are our strengths? What are our strengths we bring to the table that allow us to engage in a more productive way? So someone like myself, I use a lot of warmth and humor and affection to engage people. Other people might use storytelling, or they might use data or an inquisitive nature, asking questions. We all do it in different ways. So knowing what your strengths are in terms of how you connect with people is a great way to create that engagement. And then finally, taking the time to understand the different tactics and strategies to make you a better engager. I mean, there's so many, like whether you're networking or whether you're building leads or whether you're trying to manage client relationships, there are tons of strategies and tactics you can use to make them better. So doing the work and the homework to learn that stuff is going to go a long way for you.
So you mentioned networking, and I know that you've given the talks on it, and I was just wondering, what would be the top networking tip for entrepreneurs or anyone who's trying to start the business or promote his or her brand?
Good question. The one thing I would say is build mastery in networking, because it's going to generate leads. It's going to build better relationships. You're going to get customers, clients, partners, suppliers, recruiting. People don't take the time to work on that. And, and when it comes to building mastery, there's many things you do. You can work on your mindset. You can come up with tactics and strategies. You can have a plan. You can start practicing more often. But I think the number one thing is really to invest the time to build that mastery in networking, because it's going to serve you well. And not even just in networking. I mean, being a better networker will allow you to be a better speaker, a better presenter. It'll allow you to sell your product better. It'll allow you to sell you better. It'll allow you to sell other people better. So I think taking the time to invest in that and build that mastery will be really huge.
Just so we are clear, Bobby, building mastery means what exactly? Can you just give us a few examples of it?
When I say building mastery, I mean doing what it takes to become very good at networking. So take the time to invest in learning about it, which includes going to events, learning from others, getting mentorship, practicing tactics, practicing strategies, having a plan. These are all things you can do to build the mastery in networking. So when I say build mastery, try to get really, really good at it. Every single person has the ability to get very good at it, no matter what their personality type or leadership profile is. They can actually take the time to do it. So when I say build mastery, I mean really work on it and invest time and energy to work on it. Now, I'm not saying you do it all the time of the week, but even spending 2 to 3 hours a week, where you're 1 hour you're going to an event and another couple hours you're spending time messaging people and setting up a couple of quick 15-minute calls. These are going to help you in many different ways that are going to help your business and your career.
It's funny. I actually spoke to some people about networking, and they say, I don't want to be promoter. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that goes back down to mindset, right? So, you can think of yourself as a promoter. You can think of yourself as a helper. To me, networking is about giving, and you're giving value. You're trying to help people. So when I meet people in networking, I say, how can I help you? And even further to that, I say networking leadership is how can I help you make a difference? So what I do is I spend time with people to understand who they are, what drives them, what are some of the challenges, and I try to figure out a way to help them. I'm not trying to sell them. I mean, eventually there might be an opportunity for a transaction, but in the beginning, you're just trying to build a relationship. So what I would tell those people, don't go there to promote yourself. Go there to help other people. And in the process, you'll definitely get to know you, and you will be promoting the fact that you are a helper, which which is a nice thing. So focus on that.
So it's a mutual sort of exchange, what you're saying to us.
Yeah, although again, I would technically start with the giving piece, but when the conversation starts, it turns into something mutual. Now, there might be some people who just take from you. Well, that's rare. But if that's the case, you know what? Give them once or twice, and then at a certain point, if they're not willing to ask you questions or invest in you, then you can move on to someone else.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit about personal branding because you're an expert, you have a company. Can you tell us a little bit more what makes a brand stand out?
Yeah, I mean, branding is all about reputation, integrity, perception, how people perceive you. It's about the emotional resonance and the emotional experience that you give to people. And so the way to stand out is to try to find ways to create that emotional resonance. Now, some of it comes from the look. So whether it's the way you dress or your logo or your website, another part of it is the experience that they get. So when someone meets you in person, are they getting that first 20 seconds of glowing golden, love and awareness, or are they getting something cold and distant and dismissive? When they go to your website, are they inspired by what they see? Are they entertained and informed by what they see? Do they want to scroll further and invest even more into your website? And another thing about personal branding is the follow. What's next? Don't just leave it as here's the first impression, here's how we engage, but then is there anything after that to create more memorability in terms of who you are? So, personal branding is something that we all have, whether we like it or not. It's based on the perception of the people around us. My personal brand is based on how people think of me when I engage with them. So if I want to have stronger personal brand, number one, I need to know what that brand is currently. I need to also understand what I want to do to adjust the brand and make it better. And then I should work on, having those consistent behaviors to adjust the aspects of my brand in a more positive light. And then, of course, there's a whole other aspect of branding, which is the online piece, which is, setting up your social media profiles, your LinkedIn profile, things like that. That's a whole other ballgame. But ultimately, I think personal branding is a way for us to, manage how people perceive us. And there's a great quote, personal branding is what they say about you when you're on the room. And I think that's a great quote because that's people are talking about you when you're not there. But I would take it even further to say, if you want to have a great personal brand is what they say when you enter a room.
So it seems to me you have to know yourself and then develop the story around that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the networking. A big problem with personal branding is that people don't take the time to invest the time and energy to understand what it is. And it's good experience because once you know what it is, you can craft a story around who you are that will resonate with the people that you're targeting. And if you craft that story that is targeted, and particularly in some ways, niched in a certain way, as opposed to being a generalist, then you're going to attract the right people that you want for your business or career, whether you're trying to generate leads for your career or whether you're trying to generate leads for your business. That brand that you work on is going to lead to lots of opportunities for growth. And so, as I tell people too, is that personal branding allows individual organizations three key things. One, it's personal branding allows you to find focus. Focus when it comes in terms of clarity, purpose, direction. Number two, personal branding allows individual organizations to create more alignment. So more meaning, more passion, more values fulfillment, more happiness. And then number three, ultimately, personal branding allows you to create more impact. So, success, achievement, legacy, and that story that we talked about. So if you want more focus, alignment, and impact, then personal branding is the best investment for you.
So, I talk to other people on the show and I want to get your opinion on it. Sometimes we create a great story, we have a great brand, but it's not hitting the market, right? When do you know that you need to change up a little bit? Is there like a time limit? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good question. Part of it depends on, what's your objective. So let's assume it's an objective to build a business. I mean, if 6 months in you're not getting any clients, that's a problem, right? But what you should be doing in the process throughout is you should be constantly getting feedback from every single person, your friends, your coworkers, potential clients, using feedback and crowdsourcing to get information about, what you're trying to do. And is there benefit and value for it? Are people going to pay for it? I mean, it's nice to have a brand that, you love, but if you're trying to build a business, no one's going to pay for it and the world doesn't need it, then it's not going to be that value add for you. So I think it's important for you, from a business perspective, to set a timeline that's reasonable. 6 months to me would be sufficient. If in 6 months I had no clients, I'd want to understand why that is. And then I would start asking people, mentors, coaches, consultants, friends, networks, to find out exactly what's going on, because you might find out that, this thing doesn't resonate. You see people go on Shark Tank all the time and they're pitching their products and their businesses that they didn't do the research and they believe in their product, but, there's no market for it because they didn't do the work. They didn't do the homework to figure that stuff out. And so I understand the desire to continue on, but if everyone, including, lots of people you trust or really strong, smart people out there are saying this is not the right thing, you need to adjust it. I've adjusted, evolved my business model all the time over the years. I mean, when I first started out, I had certain things I was doing, and then I adjusted and evolved. And most of it was because I listened to the feedback. And I think a lot of people don't listen to feedback. They get kind of caught up in, this is my baby, and I want to build this up. And sure, that's nice, but you need to listen. And if you can't listen to your potential market, then yeah, you won't have a market.
And what about these folks that want to create a market? They say there's no market. That's a great thing because I can create that market. What do you say to them?
Well, again, they still have to prove it. You can create a market, absolutely, but you can't do it without actually proving the concept, right? So that's why there's always like proof of concept model when you're, for example, for VC funding. You have to prove the concept. If I want to start a brand new product that never existed, how do I prove that concept? I have to find a way to do that. So whether you're doing surveys or you're doing test markets or whatever it might be, you have to prove it. And it's harder with a new product, but it can be done. It happens all the time. But, I'm not going to invest in you if you have zero sales. I mean, it'd be different if you had 100 sales, but zero sales? Yeah, that doesn't prove anything.
So what you're saying, strike a balance, maybe work with the market that exists and then don't try to just pursue the market. Mm-hmm.
Not exactly. I mean, if you have an idea for a great product that's never existed, then get out there and start telling people about it. And if people say this sounds really interesting, and then if you can generate some sales, then yeah, I think you have something. But if you've done that for 6 months and nothing's happened, then maybe there's something wrong.
We talked a little bit, you mentioned storytelling, and you have given a talk about that every person has a story, purpose, and legacy. Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about it?
It's something that's very dear to my heart. I had where I was following a path of success and how to define success based on other people. So based on what my parents thought, based on what corporations thought, based on what society thought. And I kept following that path of success, thinking that if I worked hard at that thing, it would make me happy and successful. But that's not the way it worked. What I didn't realize is that I need to think about what my own story should be and what I want it to be. And so the whole point of that is I meet a lot of people who feel lost. And, my message to them is that it's okay to feel lost, but it's not okay to do nothing about it. It's important for us to understand that we all strive to connect, create story. We all want to have legacy. We all want to have a story that we can be proud of. When we look back at our life, we want to make sure that we have something that we can be proud of. And so I encourage everyone to try to go for that. And the other thing that happens too is that people often in their life start to get stuck in their own narrative. They'll be like, well, I've been an accountant for 20 years. And so even though my heart's not into it, I guess I'll stick it out. When really, if you think about it, there's ways for them to shift and transition. And I help a lot of people do that, but they can do that. They get stuck in that narrative. Or another narrative be like, well, I hate my job, but thank goodness for my wife and kids. Okay, that's great, but you can still work on having a better job. Or the worst case scenario, I don't like my life at home and I don't like my job, but thank goodness for rock climbing or hot yoga. Okay, fine, but you're allowing yourself a narrative that creates unhappiness and unfulfillment in major parts of your life. And that's not worth it. You need to invest in yourself and take the time to find that story and legacy that's going to be impactful for you and create that fulfillment and happiness that you want and you truly deserve. And so that's really why that message is there. And that's why it resonates so deeply for me, because I've been there. I've been lost. I've been stuck. And now I want to help people not feel that way there. I want to help them transition. I want to help them take their life to the next level.
This actually leads me to my next question, which is reinvention. And we talk on this show a lot about reinvention. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on it and why do you think it's so important? And I think you already talked about it a little bit.
I mean, reinvention, rebranding, redirection, however you want to call it, right? If, I was in engineering and 4 years there and it never worked out and eventually I got rejected. But as I always say, rejection is just redirection. And so you have to sometimes reinvent the wheel in terms of what's going on and what you're trying to do. So I think that it's a very common thing that we all do. And the truth is, a lot of people, I don't see anyone doing anything for 50 years in a row. Like even myself, I've been doing what I've been doing for 13 years, but maybe it's going to shift. It's going to evolve. You have to readjust and reinvent as you go along. I think that's just absolutely normal because the world's changing so fast and we evolve too. We forget to think about how we are evolving as people. And so I think it's important for us to understand that and be willing to reinvent the wheel and make the effort. And it doesn't take that long. People think it takes long, but if you look at an entire lifespan, let's say your entire career lifespan is 50 years, a redirection or a rejig is maybe 6 months, maybe 12, sometimes as fast as 3. That's a blip, really. It's just a blip. And if it's a blip to help you get more fulfillment and happiness and joy and impact, then yeah, go for it.
Sometimes folks say, I'm afraid I don't have support from my family and community. So what do you do with that?
It's a very common thing. I think the biggest reason why people don't want to shift is because of fear and doubt, right? They fear the unknown. They have doubts about their abilities. Again, working with a coach or talking to like-minded people or trying to look at what people are doing that you admire and seeing what they did and talking to them and getting feedback and maybe doing an interview, you start to see what they're up to. And what I learned when I started my career in speaking is I spoke to a couple of speakers and they gave me all those great insights into what's going to be easy, what's going to be hard. And I found that to be extremely helpful and valuable to me. So to get over that fear and doubt, the best way to do it is to start talking to people. When it comes to family, that's another really tough one because one of the things that happens is often some of your closest friends or your family are what I call naysayers. And they get in the way. They're like, well, why would you want to leave a perfectly good job to do this crazy thing? And what they're doing is they're really projecting their own narrative. They have their own fears and doubts about things and they just think it's crazy because they would never do it. But maybe they're also unhappy themselves in terms of what they're doing. But ultimately, what I would say for that type of situation is that you need to ignore the naysayers. And in some cases, you can turn the naysayers into what I call yay-sayers. People are like, yay, I can't believe you did it. You're doing a good job. And you can turn them around. And when I get those people who come to me and say, well, you can't do that, I'll say, just watch me. And I start to work on it.
Yeah, but ultimately what I liked what you're saying, be curious, network, find out. Don't just close the door just like that because someone had said no to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every no is an opportunity to find yes somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to just keep working at it. But also, I mean, the big one is, again, to keep listening. Like, don't just say, well, you said no, so you suck. No. You need to understand why they said no. Is there something from what they said no to that you can extract and learn and apply that as you readjust and redirect your work and your efforts? That's important.
And I like that you mentioned ask questions, clarify, because we do make meanings of the things that are being said to us. So my next question is the importance of language and leadership. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the greatest skills that leaders have is communication skills. And so the power of language is going to augment every aspect. Help your interactions. It's going to better your storytelling. It's going to better your marketing. It's going to better your branding, how you present yourself. So, language can be a very powerful way to create connection with people, whether it's written or whether it's spoken. In fact, I personally believe that when it comes to thought leadership, if you want to be seen as a thought leader in your field, no matter what it is, you need to work on speaking and writing and your communication skills. And within that, language is so important. Now, that said, for different people, language, depending on your target, would be different. So if my target are kids or entrepreneurs, it might be different. There are people out there like Gary Vaynerchuk who uses the way his language is very, kind of hustle hard, kind of bit crass. But, I love it. But some people don't. That's fine. Like, I'm his target market, so I love the way he talks. But other people may not. Other people prefer, talk that's very aspirational all the time. And some people I know who do that really, really well. So the language is going to be a big part of your brand. I think that people should invest time and energy to understand the words they're using, the phrases they're using, and how they're impactful. In fact, me talking to you now, I'm using language that I've been using for a long time because I know it resonates.
Yeah, I agree with you. And what I love about that, there is a piece that you mentioned, which is connection. Find a language that connects you with others. Can you talk to us more? Because I think you gave a talk on 5 C's of connection, right?
Yeah, my main primary brand I talk about is the power of connection. So like when I talk about the things I talk about, like, for example, networking, that's connection with others, and personal branding, connection with the self, and digital media and social media influence, that's connection with the world. So for me, I'm all about the power of connection, how to connect with teams, individuals, clients, customers. Connection is what links you to the people you're trying to impact and influence. Connection is what fulfills you as a person, whether it's with your family, your friends, or your clients. Connection is what creates powerful communities. And when you build those powerful communities, that's how you create change in the world. And so when you look at anything that's going on in business or social causes or in family and parenting, the idea of connection is what's really going to change the world. So I always tell people that, investing in becoming a better connector, particularly from a more authentic, vulnerable, and genuine place, is what's really going to change the world. So I'm a big believer in that. And, I like to teach people how to connect, whether it's, through networking or whether it's through personal branding or whether it's through digital storytelling. These are all different ways to get your message out there and create that community, create that impact.
Interesting. So connecting. You have to get out and connect. What are your thoughts on generosity and leadership?
Well, when I'm a leader, I'm generous with my time, sometimes too much, so I run out of time, but I think that's important. But I'm also generous with investing time in people that need it. Almost every single one of us, I think just about every single one of us has gotten ahead in life because of a helping hand, because someone else reached back and pulled us up. And so I think it's absolutely essential for us and an obligation for us, for those of us who've had success, to reach back to others and help them up. I mean, that's why I spend a lot of my time giving back in the sense that I create content to try to inspire people, to inform inform people, and I share that content on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all those places. So I think generosity should be a key part of any leader's brand. And show me a leader who's not generous, and I'll show you people who want to follow this person. Like, generosity is something that's going to attract followers.
We also talked about empathy. You actually gave a talk on it. So can you chat with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mentioned before about the importance of communication, and I think there were studies before that showed that communication was the number one sought-after tool in leaders, particularly, and especially in C-suite leaders. But the new trend that I'm seeing is that empathy is something that is greatly needed and greatly admired in leaders. And there are many leaders out there who are very authoritative, and that type of model is not working. I mean, it works to a certain point and works for certain types of targets and industries, but it's something that's losing face value. I think that empathy is one that is far more impactful, because it goes back to what I talk about connection, because empathy allows you to invest in people and understand them better and want to do so. Because empathy is about asking the fundamental question, can I understand what they're feeling? Number two, can I understand why they're feeling that way? And number three, can I support how they're feeling? And if you can do that as a leader in terms of empathy, you will be able to really understand your employees and create greater productivity and retention and loyalty. You will be much better at understanding your customers and serving their pain points and understanding their needs and creating solutions and products that will help them better. And so empathy to me is great, because it's going to affect both the people that work with you and it's going to affect more positively the people that you serve. So yeah, I'm a big believer in empathy.
So it's also like listening, what you're saying to us. You got to listen to what people's needs are, right?
Yeah. Active listening is about understanding how they really feel, what they're really saying, what they're struggling with, and taking the time to really do that in a way that shows empathy.
So what do you say to leaders who said that empathy actually weakens their position?
Well, I think that sounds like an authoritarian leader who thinks that way. Well, I got to be tough, and I got to, these people won't do the work. Well, sure, some people will be driven by fear, but do you really want to build a culture that's based on fear, or do you want to build a culture that's based on trust? Studies show time and time again that when people feel connected and trusted and empowered, and they will be more satisfied, more motivated, and be more productive. So, data doesn't lie. Only people lie. They misinterpret the data and what's going on there. So the people are saying, well, it's going to make you weak. No, you have to find a way to use empathy as strength. And most people, when they see a leader show some vulnerability and show some empathy, they find that really, really inspiring. So it's a question of, if you're scared of trying it, maybe try in small doses to see what people think. Ask your employees, see what they think. If you put out a survey and say, hey, would you like to see me be more empathetic? I mean, I can't imagine. No employee would say, well, I don't want my manager or my boss or my leader to be more empathetic. Of course they do. We all want that.
No, I completely agree. I just, have dealt with C-level folks that were my way or the highway. So that
I know, me too.
So that's definitely not a pathetic leader. But I have another question. How do you evaluate your own success?
Great question. Well, it starts with a definition of success. So how do we define success, right? So I think every single one of us defines it differently. I define success by looking at four things. Success to me is creating more fulfillment and impact in the four areas of my life where I need it most. One is the work, right? So your work can be your job, your business, a volunteer organization they do work for, a startup, things like that. That's the work. The second thing is the people in your life. So that's to be your friends, your coworkers, your family, your parents, your children, the people in your life that will create fulfillment in your life. Number three are your extracurricular pursuits. So, whether you're into stamp collecting or hot yoga or fitness or rock climbing, something there that creates fulfillment for you. And the fourth thing that creates fulfillment in our lives is spiritual, meditative, mental health, religion, however you want to define it. But that whole spiritual, mental aspect is what creates fulfillment. For all those out there, I would say, success is about increasing fulfillment in all four of those areas as best you can. And it comes in different ways. But for me, I feel pretty fulfilled with my work. I feel pretty fulfilled with the people in my life. I probably could do better with the mental health, spiritual thing. And in the extracurricular pursuits, I could probably do a little bit better there too in terms of feeling to have the time. But we're always working on these things. We're always trying to be better. So for me, that's how I define success. So when I look at, my life as a dad or as a friend, when I look at my work, I feel successful. And it's not based on money. It's not based on other things that are not aligned with me from a values perspective.
And I like that you mentioned, there are things that I still work on. So, because not everything is going to be always nicely balanced. So for the folks that are having trouble balancing so many things, I live in New York City and there is so much, emphasis on work. How do you bring that balance back into your life if you feel that maybe your personal life is very neglected?
Yeah, a lot of us are workaholics and we work so hard and long, we start to lose sight of it. I was there too. I was working 8 hours a week and I was losing a sense of myself and of life. And the first thing I'll say is we have to change our mindsets around work-life balance. It's not work-life balance. It's life balance. Right? Your life consists of things like work, like family, like friends, like social life, like your extracurricular pursuits and things like that. You have to fit those in a way that is best for you. And another thing to think about from a mindset perspective is if you look at the 5 regrets of the dying, when they look back on their life, what do they think about? The 2 biggest themes that emerge from the top 5 regrets of the dying is that, 1, I wish I spent more time with the people that I really cared about that meant a lot to me. And number 2, I wish I'd spent more time exploring the grand diversity of this earth. And so if you look back, are you going to be happy that you spent 80 hours a week working for a company for 50 years? Probably not. No one ever wishes they worked longer hours. They wish they had more fulfillment. They wish they had more impact. And so one is to work on that mindset. The second thing is to, reach out to other people to maybe create some sort of community or support group or maybe a couple of friends to hold you accountable. Like a lot of my friends reach out to me because they're workaholics. They're like, Bobby, I need some help with this. I was like, you know what? Fine. Let's be accountable. Let's leave work at 5 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday to start. Just to start and see what it's like. Because the moment you realize that you can actually leave work and do other things and your life actually improves significantly, you'll start to realize it's not that important to work those crazy hours. We work the crazy hours because we allow ourselves to do that way, even though we don't have to. I remember the first time years ago, this is back when I was an engineer, and I used to work every Saturday, full days, because the boss always asked me to come in. I did that for about, 6 months. And then one day he asked me to come in, and I said, actually, I can't. I actually felt awful because, again, the mindset had been trained to think that it's awful for me to reject this guy. And then he's like, okay, sure, no problem. And I was like, whoa, that was easy. And that was a huge mind shift for me. That was very early on in my career, but I'm glad I got that lesson.
So what's so funny, you talk about mindset, but you also talk about allowing yourself to say no.
Yeah.
And setting up boundaries, right?
Yeah, we should always have boundaries. And saying no is something that I think is very hard for a lot of people. But ultimately, it comes down to this. Saying no to new opportunities is saying yes to current priorities, right? Because you have things that are important to you now. If you want to focus on your health, you want to go out and work out 3 times a week after work, then that's more important. And so it's important to understand those priorities. And I remember, again, another time when I was in the corporate world, there was a woman who, we were at a meeting and it was 3 o'clock. She's like, guys, it's 3 o'clock on Tuesday. And they're like, oh, yeah, of course, you have to go pick up your kids. And they knew that every Tuesday and Thursday, she had to pick up her kids at 3:30. So she would leave at 3, which is earlier than normal, but everyone knew it and they accepted it because it was a priority for her. And she made that very, very clear. And everyone in the room was like, okay, yeah, we'll pick this up tomorrow. I'm like, that's amazing because they totally accepted it. Whereas when I was working and I was leaving at 6 o'clock, someone said, hey, why are you leaving so early? I'm like, what? So, because I wasn't setting an expectation of what was my priorities were. So she did a really good job of that. And it made me think that we all need to think about setting our priorities. And they're not different. Like, people say, well, she has to pick up her kids. That's a big deal. Someone else is like, well, I have to go work out. Well, why is that not a big deal? Health is important, but for some reason, we're saying, well, daycare, that's very, very important. I get that. Sure. Why don't we treat all our priorities the same level to which we would to pick up our kids?
Mm-hmm. What she was doing, she was also very consistent with her messaging, right? Every Friday she went out, and some of us might be one Friday going out and then the other Friday not going out. So that sends a message that you can be flexible in some respect, right?
Yeah, but consistency is also important because that's part of the branding thing, right? If people know that, you're the type of person that focuses on working out and you have a strong life balance, then they're going to start to respect it. If you answer emails at 9 p.m. on your work emails, on your phone from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. at night, people are going to expect that. So, one of the things I do is when I answer emails, honestly, I do reply to emails late at night sometimes, but I never send them. I send them all in the morning at 8:30 because I want to establish the fact that between 8:15 and not 5:30 at night, that's when I'm hustling my business and my work. But then after that, I have priorities like with my kids.
I used to answer emails till midnight, and get up in the morning at 5 and check emails. So how do you stop yourself from feeling that sense of urgency that you have to be constantly showing folks that you are working?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's lots of different debates about emails and how to manage messages and things like that. I actually always answer email messages, but I've learned over the years to not make it so urgent. Like, one example is on Facebook, you get a message and right away they see that you've read it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I better respond right away. But you don't have to. Like, one way is to just simply communicate to people. Say, look, you know what? Just so you know, I respond to emails within 48 hours. But if you want to get a quick message from me, send me a text message. And people are starting to do that. They have automated messages sent out where they say, expect a message within 48 hours. And if it's urgent, you can call me here or text me here and things like that. And they do that to set expectations with the people that are around them that are messaging them. And the second thing, of course, is going back to consistency. Like when you respond to email, you can say something like, sorry, I haven't got back to this. I typically respond to emails in 2-3 days. So here's my response. And then you say it. And you keep doing that over and over again. And pretty soon people start to know exactly the way it works.
So it's kind of training people to understand where you stand.
Yeah. Like one of the things about, your priorities, your obligations, your brand is to train other people to understand that. Right? As you project your brand, you're technically training your audience to know what that brand is. And that's how you own the brand versus them owning your brand.
I like that very much. So do you believe that being assertive helps you lead better or helps your brand stand out?
The assertiveness is kind of a balance between aggressiveness, right, and apathy. So I think it's good to be assertive. It's good to be confident. If you're passionate about what you care about, you want to get things done, then yeah, I think it's fine to be assertive. Just don't be a jerk about it, right? A perfect example is when I train people on how to follow up. People get anxious. Oh, well, it's been a week. Do I bug them? I feel like I'm bad bugging them. No, you know what? Like, be persistent, be polite, be professional. That's it, right? Let's say I meet some big shot VP at some company and they give me their card and I email them. They don't respond. Then I'll respond to them a week later. You know what? Just send a message out, just connect based on our conversation. They don't respond. Then I send a third one. They're like, well, Bobby, how can you send so many messages? I'm like, isn't that rude? I'm like, he's being rude because he didn't respond back. Like, why is the mindset that I'm the one being rude for politely and professionally following up on a consistent basis? He's the one not responding to his messages. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care how big your title is. Every single one of our time is valued on an equal level. So part of that is, just being persistent and that assertiveness, I think, will help you in the long run.
Nowadays there is many interpretations of being persistent.
Yeah.
Some folks believe that you're persistent if you send email twice, or some say you're persistent if you send email 10 times and follow up with 20 phone calls. So where do you strike that balance?
I would say that assuming you've had permission to contact them, for example, like if they have a public email or phone call or phone number or you have their business card, that's permission to contact them because they've given that to you. I would say this, be polite, persistent, and professional until you get an answer, right? So what you want is a response, either yes or no, right? That's what it is. So that could be 2 times, that could be 6 times, that could be 100 times. Mm-hmm. And I even know a guy, when I worked in corporate, I was working for the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, and he kept contacting us all the time. And he was very nice, very polite, sent really nice messages. And 9 times we rejected him over a period of like 6 months. But then I found out later on that eventually he got through and they produced some really cool stuff through his project that he's doing. So it worked.
So what you're saying to us, you're not putting yourself on so-called blacklist by constantly emailing them, and you're not lessening your chance for getting them to buy your product or even talk to you.
Again, as long as you're light and professional and maybe even throwing some gratitude, people aren't going to fault you for that. If you start saying, well, you know what? I keep calling you, never respond. I'm really frustrated. Like, okay, that's going to be a problem. Just say, very simple. Just emailing you back again because I really want to talk to you because I think you're really awesome. I'll give you a call later this week and maybe we can set up some time because if you recall, we talked about at that meeting where you said to give you a call and set up some time. So I'm happy to do that now. Let me know what's the best for you. And that might be my 7th email, but they said I could, so I'm doing it.
So I like that you mentioned gratitude. And my next question is, how do you stay humble while leading others?
Well, gratitude definitely helps with that, right? Gratitude for the little things. Not gratitude for the big things. Like, oh, I'm grateful I made $1 million. What about gratitude for something that, is really small? And how about this gratitude for service? So gratitude in general is a good thing to stay humble. Number 2, keeping a leadership mindset of service or servant leadership. So, how did I help someone else today? That would be a really good way to stay humble. A third thing is always work with your team or your audience to ask questions and get feedback on, how am I doing in this area? Am I grounded? Am I humble? Am I keeping it real and authentic? Because I think too often business leaders start to lose sight of that because they become either divas or they get very popular or very rich and they start to lose sight of what brought them where they were and they don't give back. And so I think, asking for feedback from people and having that clear, honest feedback, as opposed to having yes men or yes people, I think that's a great way to stay humble with what you're doing because we all started from a beginning and we all have our roots. And I think it's always important for us to honor our roots and be grateful for those roots and where we came from.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned yes men. And how do you train your folks not to become yes men?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's hard to know. Sometimes in the meeting, you'll say people agree with you, but part of it comes from you creating that culture, right? So creating a culture around you. And what I mean is a subculture around you and your colleagues that people can be very transparent and honest about it, and they respect that. The other way to do it, if you're worried about it, is to create some sort of anonymous feedback system where people can give you stuff without them worrying about knowing who it is and having the repercussion to keep it really honest. That's another way to go about it.
That's very interesting. So do you believe having fun can help you lead better?
Having fun? Mm-hmm. Sure. I think if you're so serious that you can't have a laugh, I mean, I love humor, right? So I love laughing on the job and laughing wherever I am. So having humor and being real and having fun, yeah, I think that creates more spirit, more bonding, more camaraderie. Like for my startup, for example, we have barbecues and we went to karaoke and we go bowling and we do things like that to just keep things fun with us. I think it's important to have that because it just, a lot of times it gets too serious and stressful and people don't want to talk about their lives. But I even think on a casual basis in business, you need to talk about your personal lives and talk about how things really are because we're all going through things. We all have stuff that we're dealing with. And so I think it's important to be authentic about that, but also the fun piece. Yeah, I mean, anything I can do to enhance the positive atmosphere and build a culture and create camaraderie, I think is great. That's why, when I first started out as a speaker 13 years ago, one of the first things I did was team building events. So I would do team building events for large groups and make them do kind of fun activities, but each activity had a lesson in it. And people love that. It's actually, and these companies were doing team building activities and offsites for this very reason. So yeah, I totally believe in it.
Yeah, we actually, my previous company, we did a lot of team building. And, there are some folks that don't want to join in. So what do you do with them?
Well, I don't think you should force people to join in, but I think it's important to understand later on at a different day why they didn't want to join in, because probably there's some underlying problem. And if we invest in them and use empathy to understand who they are, then maybe we'll bring a greater connection. And if we find out they're not aligned with the organization or the fit or the culture, then we should probably fire them. One of the things I learned actually from another mentor is hire slowly, fire fast. And
it's so funny because we were actually taught differently. Hire fast, fire slowly.
Right. And that's totally wrong. And a great learning for me because I had the same problem in my startup. I brought people in quickly and then eventually it wasn't working out. And it took me a while to say, you know what, maybe we should part ways. But the idea is that now when I look at my team, all my senior team members have people that I nurture a relationship with for months and months before they finally signed on. And now, when something doesn't fit quickly, I'm fine, you know what, either step aside, step up, or step down, right? So I'm let's just cut this. And so I think that's important too, because you don't need to have that stuff holding you back. You need to find the right people that are going to help you bring your brand and your company to life.
So, but when you say fire people, you would fire them for what kind of things? Because you do want to give them an ample time to improve, right?
Oh, sure. But at a certain point, you can't give them a year to improve. I think if you're having ongoing feedback with your team members and someone's not producing well, so for example, I have one of my team that had been with us for about a month and I had a courageous conversation. I said, look, you know what? Based on what we talked about, here were the deliverables that we'd asked for. You said committed to it and it's not happening. And 3 weeks have gone by and I think that's not really good. So either you need to own this and address it or we need to have another conversation in a month. So are you okay with that? Do you understand what I'm saying? And she was like, yeah, I understand that. And so since then, she's been much better. Now, if she didn't, then I'd have a conversation. You know what? I've given you a chance. I could choose to give her one more chance and determine exactly what the deliverables are and try to make it something that they choose, that they feel they can do. And then if they still don't do it, yeah, I think it's time to let them go.
Interesting. So you wouldn't put folks on the work improvement plan and send them to trainings because, in my previous company, we had 6 months to evaluate person.
Oh, I would. Mm-hmm. I would. I mean, corporates are different than entrepreneurs, right? I'm in a startup mode, right? So it's different. I have a shorter timeline. In corporate, it's longer. But yeah, I think you can give them a certain timeline to improve. I think that's fine. I've offered her working sessions, mentorships, training, things like that to help her out. And so I totally do that too. It's just different from an entrepreneur startup model versus the corporate model, but the same philosophy is there. But at the same time, I think that if there isn't a fit, I think you should let them go.
Yeah, because I agree. They do hold you back.
Yeah.
So are there any traits that a leader needs to have to be a truly successful leader?
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of them in this talk. I mean, we've talked about empathy, we've talked about personal brand, we talked about connection, we talked about gratitude. I mean, we've talked about assertiveness. You've covered a lot of them. Ultimately, I think that it's important for you to have a clear vision of what it is that you want to do with your life or your business or your career. Number 2, work on the mindset to, try to be better at being that leader that has greater empathy, greater gratitude, and things like that. Number 3, look at the strategies and tactics that are going to get you to where you want to go and being thoughtful about those things. And number 4, having a plan of action. And I think that, the best leaders out there that are doing that, they're doing all those things. It's not just, all about mindset or vision. They also have a plan in terms of executing. They're down the trenches working with their employees and their teams to make things happen. So I think that it's all those things. It's about mindset. It's about tactics. It's about plan. And if you do that as a leader, then you're going to go much farther than other leaders.
And what is the most difficult part of being a leader?
Well, I think the most difficult part of being a leader is doing things that go against your own personality and brand, or just your own personality. Like for me, I'm a nurturer, right? So telling my team to shape up and try to be guys, like, I feel bad about it, right? And other people don't feel bad about it. So I feel bad about it, but I know it's important to do that. So it kind of goes against the way I normally am, but I think sometimes I have to be a little more aggressive in getting stuff done and making things happen. It's hard for leaders to make those tough decisions that kind of go against the way their personality is, but they need to do it for the betterment of the team or the company. And so I think that's one of the hardest things for leaders to do.
So you deal a lot with branding, and I was wondering, have you had experience with media when the media actually impacted one's company or brand? And what were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes these things happen in real life. Like, for example, the United Breaks guitar guy. This guy United Airlines broke his guitar, and he wrote a song about it, and they ignored his pleas to replace it. And next thing you know, he wrote a song that went viral, and then it ultimately cost the company about $100 million plus. The truth is, every company needs to be mindful of social media because it's a very powerful tool, and everyone has a voice now. And so you have to start to own that and be part of that conversation. And you have to be responsive, and you have to be of service. And it goes back to the customer-client experience, which is, be of service. Help me out, right? And then do the best you can and recognize that there's things that you can do that make sense. If they broke his guitar, they should replace his guitar. So I think, managing that brand reputation is important to understand. And I think that some companies forget about that. And, media is a very powerful tool. So you have to be mindful of that. And the other way to do it is also to start creating your own media that showcases some of the stories about you and your work and your clients and what you're doing. A lot of companies don't even do that.
And when you say that creating your own media, what do you mean by that?
Well, anything. So it could be doing a blog post, a podcast. You could do a video. So, for example, doing a video showcasing one of your employees. Like, that's a nice thing to do. Or showcasing something you guys did. Building a community around your brand through media is so awesome. And I think a lot of people, especially big companies, don't do that enough.
What you're saying to us, be in control of your own media platform.
Always. I think that you want to have some sort of plan in place to manage that and own what it is you're trying to do. It goes back to my whole thing about thought leadership, which I kind of referred to earlier, which is if you want to be a thought leader in a space, whether it's astrology or shoemaking or, coaching, whatever it might be, there's three things you have to do. One I already talked about, which was you need to work on your communication skills in terms of writing and speaking. So work on becoming a better speaker, work on becoming a better writer. Number two, it's actually about being better at networking. So building better relationships, building deep relationships, building broad relationships, and cultivating relationships in a much more profound way. And number three, it's about content, creating content and ideas, new content that drives the conversation forward in your industry, in your space. And if you do those three things, that's what all the thought leaders are doing in their spaces. They're working on relationships, they're creating content, new content ideas, and they're working on their speaking and their communication skills. If you do that, you'll be able to create a strong thought leadership brand for yourself.
And don't be afraid of the negative feedback on your content, right?
No, even if they're haters, you should embrace the haters, embrace the negative feedback because it's good insight. I mean, I take feedback in a certain way. Either feedback is something I can implement right away, or I can resolve why I'm not going to do it, or I can dismiss it, but for a specific reason. It's important to think it through as opposed to I'm not going to listen to it. But that feedback, even from haters, I mean, heck, if you get 100 people hate something you're doing, you need to listen to that. If it's one, you can probably dismiss it. But if it's 100, that's a totally different ballgame.
So how do you know that the haters might be wrong?
Well, you don't. What you do is once you listen to it, you try to understand from empathy how they're feeling, why they feel that way. And then you may want to get feedback from your network to say, what do you think about this? And then once you have all that information, you can then validate what decision you want to make based on what you've heard. And it's okay to dismiss feedback, but it's got to be dismissed based on clear strategic rationale.
So I love that because you're saying to us, if you want to be a good leader, you have to be open to feedback.
Absolutely. Otherwise, if you can't listen, you can't change. Another big aspect of leadership is, leadership is about influence. Leadership is also about evolving, growing, and changing for the better. The whole point of leadership is that we evolve, grow, and change ourselves for the better so that we can greater impact everything around us, ourselves, our teams, our companies, the world. And so that's what leadership is.
And we all have a blind spots.
Sure we do. Well, because every single one of us are human. We have blind spots, we have our biases, we have the way we were raised, our experiences, our intuition, which can be good in some ways, but sometimes can blind you as well. And so that's why it's so important to have objective feedback, 360-degree feedback, but getting feedback from people.
What are your thoughts for women leaders?
Well, women leaders are something that I love supporting. And I think there's definitely challenges that they have, particularly in many of these cultures that are too patriarchal or, have too many men that are not willing to be allies. And I think it's important for women to stand out and to, get the support they need to find allies as well. So, women should support each other, but also men should be better allies. And if you find allies, whether men or women, to leverage those to take your leadership to the next level. And, eventually by creating success and building thought leadership and working hard, we can all make a difference. But I think it's going to take a while to start break through some of those barriers. But I know a lot of amazing women leaders who are doing this now, and they're doing great. And so I totally encourage that.
And what I like about it, you said there are men that will support women to move into positions that they need to be, right?
Well, yeah, one of the things I learned as a person of color is that, years ago, my dad said that, any minority group that wants to get equality of rights needs to get the other people on board, the oppressor. They need to get the oppressor on board. So that means that if you're women, you need to get men on board and to convince them. And if I'm a person of color, I need to get people that are not people of color to convince them that this is, something that we need to do. So it's important for us to do that, yeah.
So what is your mission in life?
My mission in life goes back to my why statement, which is there are lost, stuck, unfulfilled leaders everywhere I go. And what that means is people feel lost in their jobs, stuck in their careers, or unfulfilled in their relationships. And so my mission in life is to help those people get unlost, unstuck, more fulfilled, and to find that happiness fulfillment that's going to help them in their business or their careers. And that fits everything I do for my brand. The power of connection that I leverage to help people do that fits everything I do. So for my business, my startup, my career of speaking, it also even fits me as a friend. So I help my friends out, and it helps me as a parent. I help my children out. Mm-hmm. It helps me as a partner. I help my wife out to be that supporter, to be that champion, to help them out. So for me, it fits everything I do. Mm-hmm. That's my mission.
And any final thoughts?
That's a tough one because we've talked about so much stuff. So it's kind of hard to come up with the one thing. I think ultimately the one thing I'll tell people is that every single one of you has a story and a legacy that you can create that creates fulfillment. And you need to start investing in your personal brand to figure it out. And you need to ask for help, because if you do ask for help, it will be there. Don't get stuck in your narrative. Don't get stuck with horrible job or horrible boss or horrible life. You can create that impact. And if you need help, I can and I will help you.
So you can change your life.
Absolutely.
And how can people contact you, learn more about what you do?
Sure. So you can reach me on my website, raeallan.com, which is spelled Raeallan, DYPB.ca, DYPB.ca, that's Discover Your Personal Brand. And then across social media, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, my handle is Raehan Bobby, RaehanBobby.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bobby, for being a guest on our show.
My pleasure, Biana. It's nice to talk to you too.
Thank you. Our special guest was Bobby Umar, an inspirational speaker, coach, president of Raeallan, and the CEO of DYPB. Discover your own personal brand. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Leadership with Biana Kovic Show. Remember that you're all leaders in your own rights, and the impact that you're meant to achieve starts with small acts of kindness, curiosity, and generosity. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and until next time.